First, am I the first speaker?
Yes, sir. You are the first speaker.
Okay,
You're
good.
the first speaker, and we're waiting for your wonderful presentation.
Great. So I have 20 minutes
You
to
can
go.
start.
Okay, good. Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hamid Ektiari, and I'm talking right now from Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's something like 7:30 p.m. right now. Alex, I think that you should shut down the mic of your Skype there, because I have the kind of the circulation of the voices. Alex.
We need to reduce the volume.
Alex.
Hamid, we need to reduce the volume in some way or another.
Yeah, you basically need to shut down the mic of the Skype in your computer.
No. Don't do that. He wants us to mute our side, so he doesn't get feedback. So mute on Skype. Mute the Skype. Okay. I think he's getting feedback from them, so you can't.
Okay, let's go. Can you hear me right now? Okay. Do you hear me? Okay, good. Okay, let's go. Okay. Right now it's 7:30 p.m. in Oklahoma, and we are still on Saturday. So you are ahead of us in terms of the time, and I hope that you have started a really good tomorrow right now. What I'm going to talk about, let me just try to bring my slides. Okay. So first of all, I need to kind of thank three major figures that they have been influential in this series of projects that we have done in the field. First of all, Martin Paulus, who is the director of the Laureate Institute for Brain Research. Robin Opperly, my co-PI in several of these projects that I'm going to present today. And Tara, she was my kind of former PhD student, and now she is a faculty member at Tehran University in the psychology department. Okay, so the first question is, how is our success rate right now in addiction treatment? How much we are really successful in treating people with addiction and drug addiction? The reality is that when we go for kind of published literature in the field and we evaluate the effect size of the treatments that we are providing right now for different drug users, you can see that the effect size is low to medium. So we really do not provide a really successful treatment for these people. And if we go even for specific sorts of kind of psychological treatments that we already provide, like continuous weight management, CBT, relapse prevention programs, you can see that the effect size is still really low. And if I make specific numbers for that, in reality, we provide something like 30% of the participants with clinically significant abstinence, compared to something like 30%, 13% for the control condition. So we all agree that we are not that much successful in drug addiction treatment. And you might say that we are not that much successful in other treatment of many other psychiatric disorders as well, but you know that, I mean, compared to many others, we are still really low in terms of how much we are successful in addiction treatment. And we are kind of pretty much well informed that we have lots of cognitive deficits among drug users. We have published kind of trials for that. I mean, we have published different studies, and people in the hall. Antonio is a great leader in the field, showing that there are many cognitive deficits in the field. I mean, among drug users. Alex has done lots of really great things. Kind of recently, he published a really new study showing the cognitive deficits among opioid users, and we all know that cognitive deficits are significantly important among drug users. So we have that, and we have also shown that in our kind of recent study here among 1,000 psychiatric patients, including something like 300 people with substance use disorders, that we already have significant amount of cognitive deficits compared to not only to the healthy control, but also people in other mood, anxiety, psychiatric disorders. And we are well informed that those cognitive deficits could contribute to the treatment success. And we know that those who have lower cognitive functions, they probably have kind of least amount of success in addiction treatment. But how we might be able to make a change in terms of thinking how addressing those cognitive deficits might be helpful. We hope that kind of sorts of exercises would be helpful for people. So the general idea is that, okay, we might be able to provide people with a specific, let's say, cognitive exercises, and that could help them in terms of regaining their cognitive functions, and that could help for addiction treatment. So addressing those cognitive deficits would be helpful. But in reality, it is much more complex than the initial idea. We know that there are different sorts of cognitive deficits associated with drug addiction. And what we are supposed to target is a challenging question. How we might be able to do that is a big challenging question. I think that people in this symposium today, they are going to discuss about that. So kind of in the next presentation, you will kind of listen to lots of different things that we are thinking that might be helpful for targeting for addiction treatment. I mean, neurocognitive targets, but we are still discussing about what could be the best target. We developed a specific program targeting some of those cognitive functions something like 4 years ago. We call it Nicorida in the kind of first place. And kind of for those who have been using the package, we have been naming it as Brain Gym. So we started with the package, and the design of the package was kind of arranged in a way that we had 16 sessions, and we designed it in a graded way. I mean, as you can see here, from the session 1 to session 16, we had repeated use of different exercises in different level of kind of complexity. So we start from something like level 1 to level 2, level 3. So we make them more complex over a time. So that is the kind of the major design that we had for Nicorida. And we ran a trial among 120 opioid users. We divided them in two groups, and it was kind of classic RCT trial. And kind of Tara was in charge of that trial. It was kind of basically her PhD thesis project. And as you can imagine, that we had two groups of kind of subjects controlled for their clinical profile and their background, and then kind of having neuropsychological assessments based on that they have been kind of balanced in terms of their neuropsychological functioning. And in terms of the outcome, if we have done the 2 months intervention and then assessment, and we have been successful in showing that there are significant improvements in some of those cognitive functions, especially in terms of the working memory, learning, those areas that we have been kind of more successful in making a change from T0 to T2, and also we have followed them for 6 months, and we have shown that those cognitive kind of changes would remain after a period of kind of follow-up. But the challenging part started from the reality that we have not been successful in terms of showing any significant difference in terms of their retention in the treatment. So the retention was basically we didn't have any significant difference between cognitive rehabilitation group and control group in terms of the retention. And as you can see, the retention was really poor. So after the initial intervention that we had for 8 weeks, and they have been in a residential setting, we had lots of kind of dropouts through the first 3 months of the follow-up. That because basically the initial program was something like a court-based program. They had obligations to come back for their something like kind of court-based obligations. But even after that, we had a significant other kind of levels of dropout, and we have not been able to. There was a kind of a trend of kind of having people in the kind of control group having kind of less retention, but it was not significant. So we have not been successful in showing that there is a kind of significant terms in terms of retention. But in terms of the substance use during drug tests, we have been successful in showing that after the first 3 months of follow-up and the next 3 months, there was a significant difference in terms of their both morphine drug tests and methamphetamine drug tests among those substance users. You can see the kind of details of the trial and what we have done for opioid users in this published article. But we realize there are still many challenges that we are facing to be able to improve the program. So we started to think about a new program that we call Brain Gym 2.0. And in Brain Gym 2.0, we recently kind of named that as Neurocognitive Empowerment for Addiction Treatment, NEAT, the program. We try not to just target cold cognitive functions like attention, working memory, and those areas, and executive functions. So we added some other, let's say, hot cognitive functions to the package. Things like negative balance, positive balance, areas like kind of decision making, problem solving, and we are kind of working on the details of that. I'm just going to give you an idea. And we changed the design to a kind of more elaborate way, in a way that we have from the first sessions, we start from really basic cognitive functions, and then we add to that session by session. So every single session we add to the previous level of discussion about brain functions involved in drug addiction. And in 16 sessions, we go from the really something like sustained attention and flexible attention and working memory to negative attention and affective memory and decision making, those more complex cognitive functions for 16 sessions. That's the kind of the hierarchical design that we already have for Brain Gym 2.0. And this is the kind of the sample pages of the Brain Gym 2.0. We also added a new idea of giving people a brain planner. That's something like this, because one of the challenges that we had is how we might be able to kind of ask people to take those ideas to their homes, being able to use those things. And with those organizers, we have been successful in asking people to monitor what they have been doing in home and bringing those ideas to the kind of therapy session. So that's another kind of side of the need. And right now we are running a large-scale clinical trial with fMRI pre and post, with support from Oklahoma Center for Advancement of Science and Technology in 4 addiction treatments across Oklahoma. And if you are interested to know about the details, you can find some of those details in this kind of paper that is published in Progress in Brain Research. But in the second part of the talk, I'm going to talk about another thing that we realized over what we have been doing, in terms of we realize that those who have been in our kind of pilot studies or in our trials, they are asking lots of questions about their brain recovery during addiction treatment. In the first Brain Gym trial that we ran, we had another kind of additional educational module to the entire package. We were calling that Brain Treasure. We have been providing that for clients and for their families. But we realized that there are many questions that are asking about addiction. And we realized that we talk with people kind of addiction as a brain disease, but in reality, we do not provide them with educations that are helpful to give them a better understanding about addiction as a brain disease. We recently published a textbook on neuroscience for addiction medicine, and people who are already in the hall, most of them, they have been contributing to this textbook. It has been published in 2016. It has 38 chapters about neuroscience for addiction medicine. But in reality, we know we have lots of things about neuroscience for addiction medicine, but in reality, we do not provide that knowledge, and we do not communicate that knowledge with patients. So we realize that we do not provide our psychoeducation. What we provide in terms of psychoeducation for addiction medicine right now in the field is not really neuroscience info. So we started a new program that we call Neuroscience Informed Psychoeducation for addiction medicine, or NIPE. And we realize there are many areas for NIPE that we can communicate with patients. But I'm not going to discuss about those ideas. But we realize that we need to have cartoons to be able to communicate those really complex concept to people. And cartoons are attention friendly, they are memory friendly, they are helpful for reframing those functions, they can provide heuristics. So they can, one single cartoon can transfer messages like how stress could be detrimental for your process of recovery and your brain recovery. So we realize that those cartoons would be helpful for people. But meanwhile, we really like to have cartoons in a way that provide a level of self-awareness for people. So we like the cartoons to be connecting to the people and kind of having people feeling that those cartoons could be relating to them. So as you can see, we have been providing different sorts of characters for people and asking them which one would be more relevant to you, which one would you think that you can see yourself through that cartoon. And we have been asking people about that. I probably can ask people in the room about which one would your patients feel more relevant to, character 1, 2, or 3. You can just raise your hand, and Mehran could give me an idea about that in terms of which one you think that would be more relevant, character 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so let's go for the next one. Which one would be, I mean, which one do you think that your patients would feel that would be relevant to them? Character 1, 2, or 3? Okay, for the sake of time, I'll just give you an idea that we realize that we can kind of use those cartoons. So we started the cartoons from really basic things, and then you can see that these are kind of the more developed cartoons, and we realized that those cartoons, I mean, we started with something like really basic cartoons, but we received lots of feedback that, for example, the red nose and the hair, people really didn't like those kind of stigmas or stereotypes. So we started to add, kind of revise those cartoons, or even thinking about how those cartoons would be relevant to kind of women in the treatment centers. For example, we realized that most of them, they really do not have a type of family, so they were not relating themselves to those cartoons. So we kind of added things like kind of Wonder Woman or other characters that would be more relating to the people, and even people for color. So we realized those things should be really important in terms of how we are developing these sorts of cartoons for people. So we already have the series of posters. I think that National Center for Mental Health in Korea, they translated the material to Korean, and they are providing these posters right now in the Congress, so you can have copies of the posters. So we ran kind of a pilot trial, seeing how patients would be interested to the material, and we developed a booklet out of it. We call it Brain Healing First Aid. This has also been translated to Korean, so you can have the Korean version as well. It has been translated by National Center for Mental Health in Korea. It has 3 major parts discussing about brain injuries, how brain recovery could happen, and what are the brain exercises, providing ideas for people, and there are even some animations among those cartoons. I do not have enough time to discuss about those animations. And we also provide some specific games for people, discussing, when we talk about attention, what does focused attention mean? What does flexible attention mean? We're providing the specific games that would be also engaging for people through the process of kind of doing these exercises for people. You can have more details about these kind of types of neuroscience informed education, and we presented the initial material in the ISAM meeting in last year, and since then it has been translated to 8 different languages, and we are right now looking for others who are interested to translate this material in other languages. And the materials are free of charge, so people can use them across the board. And we are running different sorts of kind of education courses for people who are interested. But in reality, kind of the last kind of type of a slide that I'm going to discuss is how these things are going to be added to the treatment as usual that we are providing for people in recovery. And we know that we have different treatment settings. So what we do right now, for example, in the residential settings, what we do, we provide the neuroscience-informed psychoeducation material in the residential settings, and then we do the brain gym material for the transitional living. Or, for example, in the hospitalized setting, it could be different, or in the office-based settings, we have different kind of integration of what we have to the treatment as usual. And then right now we are also providing people with extended material that they can do those exercises not only for the let's say 2-3 months of the brain gym, but also afterwards in long term, because we know that in addiction treatment, if you do not provide a long term treatment, it's not going to work. There is a book chapter we recently published with people in Cambridge discussing about how we might be able to target areas for addiction rehabilitation. And in the first kind of attempts for Brain Gym 1, we have been targeting some areas, but right now we are extending those areas with adding brain imaging to the package and also considering some hot cognitive functions inside. There are hopes for using brain stimulation. In the next talk that I will have today, I will discuss about that probably in the kind of next symposium. We will discuss about how brain stimulation might be helpful. We have, as Alex mentioned, that we are right now asking people to submit their manuscript for new issues that we are. I mean, Antonio, Alex, and I, and a few other colleagues, we are co-editing together for brain and cognition for addiction medicine, and just few take-home notes. We are hopeful that there would be potentials even for reducing neurotoxicity among drug users, even before starting the treatment. There are questions how we might be able to do cognitive screening before starting the treatment. What are the instructions that we can provide with people with cognitive deficit? What are the basic cognitive rehabilitations? What are the targets that we can provide? Should we provide different cognitive rehabilitation trainings for people with different drug use disorders? How it could provide hopes for relapse prevention? How it could provide ideas for comprehensive treatment, and what are the main challenges that we are facing right now. For example, it's really hard to bring people, when they leave the addiction treatment, to invest their time for these sort of cognitive rehabilitation, and how we can provide them with the specific services and packages. That's the general idea that we are right now looking forward. And we hope that the neuroscience interest group right now in ISAM would provide a networking potential that we can run these sort of trials together in a collaborative way in the future. And I hope that kind of we can discuss about these things together in the next step. So I try to be on my time for 20 minutes. I talk for 21 minutes. Sorry for extending my talk. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. As usual, very inspiring lecture. Can you hear me, Ahmed?
Yes.
Yes, good. So we have time for questions, comments, observations from the floor. 2 questions. I'll start oral. We have Kelly here from the American Society of Addiction Medicine, President.
Hello. Thank you for that. That was, can you hear me?
Yes.
I gotta turn it on. How do I turn it on? I'm technically challenged. Here I go. Hi. Thank you so much for such a wonderful overview of the work you're doing. And if I have a comment, my comment is cool. This is cool. And if I have a question, my question is, how do we get to see more of what you've done here? Is it on the website that we can go to, or how can we see more of your work? Thank you very much.
Alex, would you repeat the question?
Okay, so this Kelly Clark from ISAM, American Society of Addiction Medicine. So she basically said that you are food. No, that your work is food. And it's a website where people can go in and see the work that you presented in that cohesive way and be able to participate, because you presented all sorts of publications, but is there a central point where people can come and look at the piece of work and participate?
Yeah, what we try to do, we hope that kind of ISAM Neuroscience Interest Group could provide this platform. I mean, we already have things in our academic web pages, so those things are available. And if people email us, we can share those materials. But in reality, we think that we need a shared platform together. So right now, I think that right now we are discussing with Alex. I think that having Alex as the president-elect of ISAM is a great opportunity right now, that we can have ISAM as a platform to provide these kind of types of materials that we are doing in other parts of the world, to share with people who are interested to have these sorts of material.
Okay, this is Simon Antonio, is one of the co-chairs of the ISAM Neuroscience Interest Group, and one of the plans is to, provide that platform amongst other places. Another question. Okay, I'll ask a question to the floor, Ahmed. Basically, do you think this is exciting? We heard the cool word there. Do you think from an ecological, valid way, practical, pragmatic, clinical environment, do you think this is workable?
Alex, can you repeat the question again? It's really,
I'm asking the floor and say, look, this is great, cool, really looks, very intuitive, but is it practical in a physical environment? So I was
the reality is, Alex, even right now, we are facing many challenges. I'm sure that you all know about practicality of these things. For example, when you have a package that would have few sessions, it's not that much hard to do. Or if you want to do it in something like, we call it kind of explanatory way, providing everything, providing incentives for people to attend, that is kind of practically doable. But in the pragmatic way, when you want to go to a really pragmatic clinical trial without incentivize people too much, and do something that could be doable in the real clinical practice, and convincing people to put their time for something like 4 hours, 6 hours per week doing this sort of cognitive rehabilitation, is challenging. So you can see that patients are interested, but especially in US, as insurance companies would just cover the treatment for, let's say, 1 month or 2 months, and people basically need to leave to go to sober living places, and in the sober living places they have to work and they have to be financially kind of independent. It is really hard to bring a kind of patient who is already working outside to make money for something like $8-10 per hour to do those exercises with the hope that it would get their cognitive function better. So we need to have a more comprehensive addiction treatment model, at least in US, because otherwise, for example, let's think that we have been treating cancers like what we are treating addiction, providing something like 1 month of treatment for people and then kicking them out without providing extended treatment. So that is the situation that we have right now in the US. The reality is that we are just providing them with a limited amount of kind of treatment window, and we just kick them out to the society and ask them to work in the society. How we can provide people with cognitive rehabilitation that needs a long-term treatment protocol with that setting? These are the challenging parts of that, and we all have those challenges.
Thank you, Ahmed. One last question from Raju in Canada.
Thank you, Raju from Canada. Thank you, Ahmed. This is very exciting. I echo what Kelly has said. You are likely familiar with the addiction definition that we have. Addiction is a primary chronic disease of craving reward, motivation, memory, and brain circuitry. And the second sentence says dysfunction in these circuits leads to characteristic biological, psychological, social, and spiritual manifestations. So this is exciting work, but my specific question back to you is, are your modules addressing all aspects of the disease, or are they just focused on the cognitive function? Because on a practical level, I can say to you, as the chief author of the definition, I've been incorporating these concepts and brain science into treatment for our patients on a longitudinal basis for over a decade now. And I have patients in retention and treatment and recovery who come to see me still for over 10 years. So I echo what you're saying, and I I would implore all the audience to look at the chronic disease framework for managing this disease.
So the question is, Ahmed, are you focusing around the cognitive element of the definition of addiction, or do you feel that this is going more than that?
Yeah, the major issue is that,
You're running out of time.
yeah, the major issue is that when we talk about cognitive aspects of drug addiction, we are not limiting the definition of cognition to just, let's say, executive functions or working memory and attention. We think that when we talk about cognition, we are talking about extended processings that we are kind of having inside the brain. So it includes things like positive balance, negative balance. It doesn't have that kind of limited definition of cognition. So right now, our main challenge, our main issue with the Brain Gym 2.0 is how we might be able to add additional positive valence, negative valence domains, combine them to what we are doing with other parts of addiction, trainings for attention, working memory, executive function, inhibitory control, and flexibility. So the idea is how we might be able to integrate them. We are hopeful that our new package would provide that, and we are happy to share our package with anyone around the world who is interested to have the package and run trials with the package. But even with developing the package, for something like 6 months, it was really challenging for us to fine-tune that. And it is, as you can imagine, it's not easy. And I think that Antonio would also talk about that because he has lots of really great experience for those combinations as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me show our appreciation for. We'll see you soon. I'm getting non-verbal messages here from. We have documents.
Yes, so since some people asked about how they can get involved, these are some posters based on the work that's been going on. You can find them in Queen 108. You can leave your contact information there. Contact. I'll distribute some of these, some sets of these posters around the room, so you can see them. And we have the Korean version has been added too, and we have them in several different languages.
Okay, thank you very much. Ahmed, you're most welcome to stay, but we're aware it's 2 o'clock in the morning there. It's up to you, I don't know. I'm already left, I'm not really sure there. But I think we're going to change microphones and invite Dr. Victoria Manning, Associate Professor at the Monash University.
So thank you so much. We've got to leave, I think.
Yeah, bye-bye.